Bleach has given me a lot to talk about and a lot to think about lately, whether it was everything in its beautiful flashback chapters or all of the interesting introspection that Ichigo gained about himself to take his next steps. There's been so much, but now there's a whole other part of the story to really get into, because it seems like it's time to talk about Uryū. Since the beginning of the Thousand-Year Blood War, from the moment I realized that the Quincy were the new antagonists, I said that there was a good chance Uryū may be forced to choose between his people and his friends. It's the natural conflict to bring into the mix, because Uryū, and to a lesser extent his father, have been the only Quincy's we've had around. They were our only access to that culture, representatives of a group of people seemingly on the verge of extinction, but they're also not exactly the ideal example of what the Quincy's used to be. It's like Luke Skywalker in The Empire Strikes Back compared to what the Jedi were in the prequels. Like, sort of, but not really. Ryukin barely wants anything to do with being a Quincy, and Uryū just learned from his grandpa, but otherwise didn't grow up in that environment. He wasn't surrounded by other Quincy's because there weren't any around. The arrival of the Vondenreich changes Uryū's place in this world. He's no longer carrying the weight of his ancestors on his shoulders by himself anymore. There are others now, people that could potentially help him understand his own history, his own culture, and give him a new purpose, maybe the purpose he's been looking for this whole time. It feels like the natural place to take his character, so Uryū joining the Vondenreich didn't shock me. It wasn't one of the big twists of this arc. It seemed like the logical place to take his story. It's interesting, though, that the manga didn't build up to it very much. At all, really. Because honestly, Uryū kind of completely vanished from the story when it comes to the pages of the manga. He says he's not going to go help the Hollows because of his views towards them as a Quincy, and then we don't see him again until he's shown as Yuabaha's new recruit. Sure, he's mentioned, especially in comparison to the new Quincy's we meet, and we learn about his parents' past, but besides that, we don't see what Uryū's up to on the page. I'm not sure why Kubo took him out of sight for a while. Maybe it was to make his recruitment as startling as possible, but it just feels odd to have him completely vanish from the story during a time when he should be his most relevant, which is why I love that the anime added material that keeps Uryū present in our minds and sets up his turn better by giving us glimpses of the things that he's unearthing about the Quincy's and the Vondenreich. It's one of the best changes that the Thousand-Year Blood War anime has made so far, if not the best, and they seem to really want to emphasize that development by shifting his recruitment just a little later to work as one of the cliffhangers at the end of the first core of episode, really making the viewer feel the weight of it for when the arc was going to continue. As for why Uryū would join the people that are currently at war with his friends, I could see a few different reasons, honestly. It might be that he has never fully felt like he belonged with our heroes, which is fair enough. After all, he was initially completely at odds with Ichigo, introducing us to differences in how Quincy's operate, and since then, a lot of Uryū's story has been about finding loopholes to continue helping his friends, despite how it often clashed with what was expected of him as a Quincy. And we saw that come up at the start of this arc when, for the first time in a long time, he flat out refuses to partake in helping his friends. They want to go to Hueco Mundo to help the Hollows being slaughtered, but he's against it because helping Hollows went against the Quincy ways. It really drove home that as much development as he's had, there's still this line that he has, played loosely with, but there is a line. It also helped that Kubo made sure to emphasize early in this arc the fundamental differences between the Quincy's and the Soul Reapers and why they literally kind of can't coexist, that their views clash on a very real level that puts the balance of the universe at stake. So to have that now as a backdrop and to put that over Uryū's relationship with our heroes, it really drives home that maybe they can't be friends anymore. But given what we learned in Everything But the Rain, and especially the additional scenes that Kubo has put into the anime, and those scenes specifically show Uryū learning about the Vandenreich and more about his mother, so it's possible, very possible, Uryū has an ulterior motive in joining. That's my guess for why this is even happening. It's totally possible that he learned about Yuabaha's role in his mother's death and is seeking revenge, getting close so that he can get his retribution. Joining the Vandenreich could just be a pretense to make something like that happen. We've had a character get close to a villain to try to kill them before, so Uryū joining the Vandenreich may have been somewhat expected, but him being named as Yuabaha's successor was definitely not. It seems like an odd choice at first, given that he only just joined the Vandenreich and that he's a mixed blood Quincy, and that he's been an ally to their enemies, but maybe that's part of why he was chosen. We do learn that he's the only Quincy to have survived the Ashvalin consecration ceremony that contributed to his mother's death, which is definitely an interesting revelation. I was wondering about that in the Everything But the Rain video, and yeah, it seems like he was supposed to lose his power and die as well, but that didn't happen, and for reasons that we don't yet know. Uryū is the boy who lived. As for why he lived, I have no clue on that one, not a clue. I don't know why it didn't work on him specifically. Maybe it was something Ryukin did to protect him, because he obviously knows about the Vandenreich. His father knew about the Vandenreich. Maybe they did something in preparation for that. My question then would be, why didn't you do anything to protect Katagiri as well? We'll see. I don't know if that's even remotely close, but that's the only thought I have, so we'll go with that. Uryū becoming the heir to the Quincy throne, though, just offers a lot to this story. He's presumably had a very different life than the rest of these people, and having him be this outsider that's suddenly given authority over them brings a whole lot of unrest within the organization, which is perfect because the dissension in their ranks allows us to see them not just as dutiful soldiers sharing a cause, but more as individuals with their own stances and perspectives on this unexpected direction that they're taking. And I loved that this let us spend some more time with the Sternritters, with how many of them there are, presumably 26-ish, at least. I needed some more opportunities to get to know them outside of being enemy combatants. I've talked about it before with the Espada and Execution, but I love seeing how villainous groups get along and learn about the interpersonal relationships between them, and these chapters give us some of that as we see more of them as actual characters and start to really define some more of their personalities. One person who isn't taking it well is Baz B, who feels like the Grimjow of this group. He's brash, he's outspoken, and maybe mistakenly willing to speak out against the leadership, the type of guy that wants to charge headfirst into conflict without pause. Considering how much I like Grimjow, I can't help but like this guy a little for his attitude and his tenacity alone. We also get some more of the others that we saw during the invasion, for instance Bambietta, who stood out for how rude she was to Komamura before when she stole his Bankai, and it turns out Bambietta is actually kind of terrifying, like serious serial killer vibes or like a femme fatale kind of thing going on when she seduces a guy and then brutally ends him immediately afterward or during, hard to know for sure. It was dark, twisted, and also a little funny in just how disturbing and out of the blue it was. She seems to be someone that gets what she wants, and what she wants she will take, and you will be in serious danger if she wants you. We also met her like gang of friends, this group of ladies that all seem pretty interesting in their own right. I like this one's little hat, and Candace Catnip may also be one of the best names that Kubo has ever come up with. Candace Catnip. Amazing. With these group dynamics, we also see how quickly many of them could get into conflict with one another, but we have people to help break it up, like Askin Naklavar, which is just another incredible name from Kubo. This section also confirmed more of their letters, and I'll be posting a video where I'm guessing what these characters' letters might mean and the words that they stand for, along with trying to predict who has some of the unclaimed letters. By the time this analysis is out, that video will already be on Patreon, but I'll put it here on YouTube after this analysis too, because I've already had some thoughts during my reading and I want to share it with you all. Just, you know I'm gonna be wrong. And I like to share when I'm wrong, just like with the Espada number video. These letters and the individual powers that come with them are apparently called shrifts, and Uryū will be receiving the same letter that Yuabaha has. the letter A. And being an X-Men fan, the letter A is powerful, especially if you wear it on a belt. It means you're the most powerful, you're the Alpha, and possibly the Omega, and you're terrifying. So I do wonder if he's going to have the same abilities as Uryū, or if the A can be multiple different things. We'll see, but as his successor, I assume he's going to also have his abilities. One of the most interesting fallouts from this successor announcement, though, is what it means for Haschwalth, who we learn was the one that previously seemed to be a shoo-in for the position of the next king. After all, we know him as Uryū's right-hand man and the head of the Sternritter. It would only seem natural that it would go to Uryū's second-in-command. He's not like a Starscream or Fabian Cortez kind of second either. As far as I can tell, he wasn't openly scheming and waiting for the chance to take the throne. He seems legitimately loyal toward his king. He spends half of his dialogue saying, "Your Majesty," and being concerned for the king. He's just a far cry from a Quincy boy that no one knows and who hasn't spent any time with the Von den Reich. As far as experience, he just seems like a far more justified candidate than someone like Uryū. And given all of the talk about pureblood Quincy's, I'm sure many view Haschwalth as the proper choice over Uryū for that reason alone. Now, I'm not sure how Haschwalth really feels about this apparently being skipped over in the line of succession, but it's kind of a classic trope for people that lose their potential kingship being a little bit mad about it, so we'll see. We could have an internal conflict between him and Uryū here if he isn't as respectful about the decision as he seems so far. I'm just so curious to see how all of these interpersonal relationships between the Sternritters play out, and continuing to get to know them. It seems like we're really starting to get into who many of these people are, and Kubo is great at making characters, so I can't wait to really see what some of them bring to the table. The anime specifically also gave me a look at a couple more of them that haven't been introduced in the manga, at least not yet. And there's one guy that very specifically looks like Thor from Marvel, and Thor's one of my top favorite superheroes, so that's exciting. Now, a lot of our heroes are also still in the middle of training and preparations for the next phase of the war. You got Chad, Orihime, Nell, Dondo Chaka, Pesce, and the mysterious figure that's obviously Grimmjow, still together, still training, and I liked the little moment of Orihime recognizing how strange it is that they are doing all of this together in Hueco Mundo. The Bleach world, in a lot of ways, has kind of been turned upside down and put these characters in some interesting and sometimes very unexpected positions, especially from their perspectives, if not narratively. I do really hope we get to see Orihime and Chad do some great things after kind of unfortunately being underutilized last arc. And obviously I'm excited to see Grimmjow, who this obviously is. Rukia and Renji are also training with Ichibei, and I personally would struggle so hard with the one where they're just standing there for so long, but I'm excited to see how they develop from this. They've been Ichigo's closest Soul Reaper buddies for a long time now, and like I've said before, I don't want them to fall to the wayside and get left behind, so I'm glad this is a way to keep them relevant and hopefully up to par. And it's here that we also learn that Byakuya has now recovered from his time in the healing springs. Now obviously Byakuya's survival is somewhat of a point of contention for me, as I've talked about since it happened, but like I've also said before, I'm open to whatever happens with him and hopeful it'll be worth it. Do I still think he should have died during the first invasion? Yes. But there's still a chance Kubo can change my mind and make me understand why it was more important for him to survive than to have him die. Now that Byakuya is healed, I'm looking forward to seeing why he was kept around. The anime also gave us more insight into Ichigo's training than the manga did, and I've been told that this is going to be solely an anime-only thing going forward. What's important to know about this is that he's still training, and apparently what he's doing will make it difficult for him to return to his old life in the living world. And it's this information that brings what I think is the scene that affected me most in all of this, and didn't have to do with any of the characters preparing for the next battle, or any of the Sternritters, any of that. But instead, Ichigo's high school buddies who are so far away from the conflict, having been not shown much at all this arc because of how little time we've even spent here on Earth. Shunsui appears to Ichigo's friends, telling them that they should prepare to have to say goodbye to him, and naturally, this doesn't really sit right with them. From their perspective, one of their friends' lives has been completely upended by all of this Soul Reaper business, and Keigo especially doesn't like hearing this and literally grabs Shunsui while yelling at him. This is a normal high schooler standing up to a centuries-old individual who also happens to be the head captain. It's such a powerful and surprising moment, but really shows how much Ichigo means to these characters, and it's kind of beautiful. I really wish this cast got to be more involved than they have been in the series, because seeing Ichigo's Soul Reaper world blend into his mortal life is always interesting. However, Shunsui offers them passes, so they'll be able to go to the Soul Society in case the results of Ichigo's training means that he can never return to the living world. The underbelly of this scene is this feeling of uneasiness. Whatever Ichigo is doing is apparently going to really change things in the future and permanently alter his life in potentially a pretty severe way. And it's part of what's got me leaning in a specific direction. Right now, I'm thinking Ichigo is being prepared to become the successor to the Soul King. Not only does it line up with it seeming like the Soul King never leaves his palace, so that's why Ichigo won't ever be able to come back, but it also lines up thematically with what's happening to the Quincy's. With Uryū becoming something of a prince, I can't help but think we're setting up Ichigo to be in kind of a similar position on the Soul Reaper side of things. It seemed Uryū was chosen for his uniqueness, and I've talked before about how Ichigo may be of interest to the Soul King for the same reason. He's different and special, and we had an additional conversation in the anime where Ichigo was told that he was going to have to go further than being a Soul Reaper, beyond being a Soul Reaper. And the last time we heard talk like that, it was from Aizen's Hogyoku transformations, which makes me think that Ichigo is going to maybe go down a similar path, just probably in a different way. If the Quincy King needs an heir, then maybe the Soul King needs one too. However, I'm also not convinced that Uryū is actually being prepared to be heir to the Quincy's and is instead being used for something else, so maybe that's happening with Ichigo too, but maybe they really are just being readied for actual leadership. I don't know. I just love that things seem to be shifting back into focus on Ichigo and Uryū and the dichotomy between them, just like there was early on in the series. They're both being shown to be unique among their groups, and there's also that line that Kyuge had a while ago about being surprised to hear that he seemed stronger than Ishida, and that shouldn't be the case, and whatever that implies, and I haven't forgotten about that. That was very weird, so maybe there's something with Ishida specifically. But if we are building toward a dramatic confrontation between Ichigo and Uryū, it could be given a lot more grandeur if they're put in conflicting political positions. A clash of kings. I could see that happening, but you never know. We end these chapters with the sudden second invasion of the Soul Society, and it's in a completely new way. It looks like the Vondenreich headquarters kind of appears on top of the Serite out of nowhere, allowing them to instantly conquer it. I'm not really sure why they didn't attack this way before. Maybe they needed Head Captain Yamamoto to be dead or something, but it's a pretty scary visual with how quickly this invasion actually happens. It's even more sudden than the first one, which was already pretty startling, but now it's like they either brought their base here or we were transported there. I'm not entirely sure, but it's very abrupt, and I can't wait to see another battle, especially since some of our primary heroes are up above still. Hopefully, this will go a little bit better for the Soul Reapers than the last time, but I'm not holding my breath. And there's that poetic prophecy about the Quincy King returning that finally gets really brought up in the manga after the anime literally started with it, and it ends with hearing that the world is going to end in 9 days. So yeah. That's not good. So hopefully I'll see you all before then. That's all for today, guys. As always, thanks for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Join the Patreon if you want to see manga read-alongs and anime reactions. And yeah, I'll see you all soon for that alphabet letter guessing video for the Sternritter. Take care. Bye.